I got into crypto because of Ethereum in 2016, and the term DeFi didn't exist back then. Even the term permissionless finance didn't exist. But when I looked at the SDK for Ethereum, I understood the kernel of the idea that we would now call permissionless finance, although I didn't have the vocabulary at the time to describe it. And it struck me as a very important idea. I'd studied finance in college, and I'd been programming since I was a kid. And so I was like, this is a big idea. So we got excited about Ethereum, went down the rabbit hole. By the end of 2017, I was like very frustrated. I was like, they're going too slow. And so I was like, all right, I got to go look elsewhere. Obviously, that road I found Solana, and that part's kind of y'all know. The funny thing has been this. I thought Ethereum was going too slow. I could have never imagined how slow they would have ended up going, because that was 8 years ago. I mean, truly, they've accomplished almost nothing in 8 years. And also how much inertia would be in Ethereum. Like, I could not have possibly forecasted either of those things correctly. But, looked for alternatives and Anatoly, and I was like, this is the right balance of engineering discipline and product focus, and just like being sensible financially. And so, we doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on Solana.
I mean, in the early days, it was maybe easy to see Ethereum moving too slow. Obviously, even a huge market cap at the time, seeing space for a faster mover to come in and, eat away at Ethereum's market cap. Like, how do you think about the opportunity from where we are today to the next kind of 10x?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's big boy time, and the vision is internet capital markets. And I think, look, any company in the world that's going from 100 billion to $1 trillion is not a one-trick pony. Apple, Google, Microsoft, all these guys. I mean, SpaceX, right? They have Starlink. They're about to launch, I guess, satellites, data centers in space. They have NASA contracts. Like, any big business is a multifaceted thing. And so when I look at Solana, it's like, well, what are those major facets? I think there's two major buckets. It's DePIN and trading. Excuse me, payments and trading. And then there's a lot of subcategories under both of those. And I feel really good about where Solana is on both fronts. On the payment side, I think basically any payments company only has one choice, two, I guess, choices, Tempo and Solana, but I think most of them will not choose Tempo for competitive reasons, unless they have some very deep relationship with Stripe. And I think almost all the other ones will go to Solana. The early evidence supports that theory. You see Western Union, you see PayPal, you see Square, Fiserv and WorldPay have already announced. I suspect in the next 6 months, you'll probably see announcements coming out of Checkout.com, out of Adyen, out of all of the other PSPs around the world. Because Solana is the only one that has the scale and the liquidity and the global on and off ramps and all that other stuff to support them. So if you're really good on the payment side, and the other side is the trading side. And the trading side is much more just more subsectors. You've got all the regulated asset issuers, the Wall Street people, BlackRock, Fidelity, Hamilton Lane, JP Morgan, all those types. At this point, you see announcements basically every week, more or less, from one of those groups issuing something on Solana. I think Solana has checked that box. I'm not really worried. At this point, the primary thing that matters for that category of people is distribution. If BlackRock's going to get their BUIDL fund into the hands of someone who wants to hold $400, who lives in Argentina, BlackRock does not have that skill developed as a bunch of guys who live in New York. What I hope and expect to see from those guys is they're going to partner with groups like Phantom and Soulflare and Backpack and say, hey, you have 25 million users, most of whom are presumably not in the United States. Let's promote our regulated financial products through things like Phantom. And again, Phantom's number one wallet in the world now. Solana first wallet. So I feel really good about Solana's positioning for regulated finance coming on chain, and specifically for distributing traditionally regulated financial products to people around the world. And then I think the other kind of major part of trading is just all the other crypto native stuff. That can be DePIN stuff, that can be meme coins, that can be perp dexes and all these other things. I'm just going to call that just kind of crazy finance. Or maybe unregulated finance. We have regulated finance and unregulated. And again, Solana today, I think has taken the lead on that front. in every way other than probably perp dexes. And I think in the next 1 to 2 quarters, Solana will be rivaling Hyperliquid on that front too. So I just feel really good about where Solana is in all these fronts. We have to execute. There's a lot of wood to chop, but I kind of think it's ours to lose at this point.
Are there other categories that you think are going to be huge and very strategically important that Solana is playing catch up in?
I think the only area Solana is playing catch up in right now is perp dex. On all the other fronts, if it's not number 1, it's like number 2, but like has a clear line of sight to being number 1. Certainly on intellectual capital, on obviously assets being issued and traded, on like net new applications. I mean, all that now Solana is the leader.
So I think internet capital markets has been a big meme over the last little while, and I've sort of noticed this sort of bifurcation of what that ultimately means.
I would call it a thesis, not a meme.
Okay.
You can call it a meme, but I think it's better than that.
I think I maybe value memes more than you do here. You write theses, I curate memes. I don't know, but you were on All In at a big event, and I think you did a really great talk articulating your thesis around internet capital markets, which I think is a much broader category than how many people in the trenches and on the timeline articulate it. So I'm wondering if you can just encapsulate what you mean by internet capital markets.
Yeah, so at like a technical level, the idea is very simple, and it's basically the ability for anyone anywhere in the world to hold or trade any asset across any asset class 24/7 with a phone and an internet connection. And like, what's funny about that is that like those properties apply to all of the internet today, except for finance or anything tied to money. But like, you can stream any song on Spotify 24 hours a day. Your emails arrive 24 hours a day. Your Telegram, right? Like everything about the internet feels like that, except for money and finance. And so internet capital markets is like very literally applying those properties to money and finance. So I think that's the answer at a technical level. At a more like kind of forward-facing level, to me, what that means is embedding, if you look at finance up until 2023, but for the prior 30 years of the internet, you had Charles Schwab and you had E-Trade and you had Scottrade, and then you had Robinhood and you had Coinbase, and now you have Phantom and whatever, right? And it turns out the user interface for all of those products in the last 30 years is the same. You open up a homepage, you have your portfolio, there's a list of assets, there's a search box at the top, you type in the ticker, you go to the asset page, there's a price chart, and there's a buy and a sell button, right? And like that user interface paradigm has been the same for 30 years. And that user interface paradigm has lived in its own little bubble, completely independent from the rest of the internet. Facebook never touched that. WhatsApp never touched that. Or TikTok never touched any of that. Media companies, right? Like nothing ever touched. That was just a fully separate part of the internet. And so to me, what internet capital markets is going to mean very viscerally for people is embedding finance all over the internet. And so in my presentation from the All In Summit, I provide some like mocked up very fun examples. YouTube, I mean, anything with financial media, like you should have a ticker, like whatever they're talking about, there should be a buy sell button, or better yet, maybe a prediction market. If you're on the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal reading about interest rates, not only should there be a price chart of the Kalshi market, there should be a buy and a sell button for is Powell going to cut rates, right? And I just think there's so many cool ways to embed finance around the internet. What's actually funny is it's funny, I said up until 2023, that paradigm was true. The thing that emerged in 2023, that was the first form of trading ever that did not look like Schwab, Robinhood, Phantom, Coinbase, whatever, were the Telegram bots. And that was the first time ever in the history of the internet that we had a trading modality that did not look like the prior 30 years of trading.
Interesting.
And at the time, the Telegram bots were very ridiculed. And I think most of the V1 Telegram bots were like, not very, very good. I continue to think that this notion of a chat bot that's in a private or even a public group chat is an incredible modality for trading because it's an intrinsically social environment. And obviously I can make a trade. I can broadcast that I made the trade. And then obviously the natural responses are I'm going to copy trade you or I'm going to counter trade you. And both of those can have fun social dynamics attached to them.
Do you see there being like big risks still, like potentially, risking this internet capital markets thesis actually happening, or is the train left the station?
Pretty hard to see how the genie goes back in the bottle at this point. Under the Trump administration. And look, like 9 months ago, we didn't know what they would do, but like at this point, we have gotten enough guidance from Treasury, from the CFTC, from SEC, from FinCEN, from the White House directly, that I feel pretty good about all this. Obviously, even if maybe most tangibly, Kalshi just announced partnerships with CNN and CNBC, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've publicly announced the scope of those partnerships. My guess is that the V1 version of those partnerships is not going to be what I just described, which is the buy and the sell button, on the news article. But like, I think they all know that's where it's going.
Right.
Look, the media companies, the last 30 years, the story of media companies on the internet's been they struggle to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is going to be one of the most amazing monetization opportunities for the media companies is to monetize order flow.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we had John and Brandon on yesterday after their announcement and got into all of that. And I think one of the big sort of, points of view that I think John has been articulating very aggressively on the internet is just how much bigger prediction markets can be and almost start putting them up as like crypto and prediction markets, these sort of two big shifts in markets and in finance. I know you guys did an investment into Kalshi recently, and at least my assumption is that was that you kind of came in later to investing in prediction markets than maybe you have been in the crypto markets. Am I correct there?
We invested in the Series C of Kalshi, which was only 8 months ago.
Okay.
There's been 2 rounds.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You are notoriously early. Like you are a high conviction early investor. What did you not see within prediction markets to make you want to make that investment earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, for me, it was spending time with Tarek. I met Tarek at the RNC last July, and I very stupidly did not spend enough time with him there. And then I met him again at the inauguration in January, and I got a little more time with him there. And I was like, I need to follow up with this guy. And so I followed up with him. Took me another couple months. His calendar was busy. I should have pressed a little harder, but kind of got to an unequivocal internal yes. And I think March. It was either late. I think it was late February, early March, and I think it was a combination of spending time with Tarek. And look, Kalshi's vision extends beyond prediction markets, and we had, until talking with him and understanding the regulatory, I didn't fully appreciate the CFTC, the CEA, which created the CFTC, and then how you can use Kalshi's DCO and DCM to go even beyond prediction markets. And once he was able to lay out that story for us, we were like, wow, this is a massive, massive vision. So we pulled the trigger there. Investing in Kalshi prior to the Series C, I mean, Kalshi was not a functional business until this year. Incredible props to Alfred and the Sequoia team for backing Tarek, I believe 2 or 3 times. Obviously, the CFTC was suing them. The Biden administration just continued to slap them down. I mean, like, there was nothing to be happy about, nothing to point at. Like, it was just pure misery for like 4 years. And like, they didn't give up, right? So props to them. Obviously, we looked at Polymarket and there was no evidence to us to support anything other than elections. So we just weren't quite there. But, Tarek painted the vision for us.
I mean, what does going beyond prediction markets mean for the vision of Kalshi?
I'll let Tarek answer that question when he's ready to answer that question, but I will tell you his ambitions extend far beyond prediction markets.
We're going to talk to you about making that introduction because we want to ask him that question directly. The other big thing that you have been involved in here is Forward Industries, which is a digital asset treasury company, the biggest for Solana. I think there's been a lot of debate around the value of those things, whether it's around the potential of these things selling, et cetera. But I think I'm most interested in what made you want to take such a public, large role in that type of organization.
Yeah, so look, people have been asking me to do a DAT for Solana for probably more than 12 months at this point. I said no like 10 times. And obviously I changed my mind at some point and said yes. I think there were 2 things that got me from no to yes. The first was realizing well, it's not just we're going to hold Sol. We have a balance sheet and we can stake Sol. And there's this whole DeFi ecosystem of all this cool stuff we can do with the balance sheet. And we can use that yield to cover coupon payments and all these other interesting debt instruments and whatever that you can see Strategy issuing. So, Kalshi's Strategy's capital structure, like I don't know how to make it make sense because he has no income and he has coupon payments, and that always concerned me. But like I can solve that problem by tapping into Solana. The second thing that occurred to me, again, I was very slow to come to this realization was, well, I don't just have to hold Solana. We can it's a publicly traded company. It's a Berkshire Hathaway or a Bending Spoons kind of a vehicle. And there's all these interesting companies in and around the crypto sector that could do things on top of Solana that are very interesting. And so that kind of light bulb went off over the summer. And then the third thing, and this was the final thing that got me all the way there, was on July 31st, SEC Chairman Paul Atkins gave a speech called Project Crypto, and he said unequivocally, we're going to move U.S. securities markets on chain. And he actually just gave a follow-up speech like a week ago, and he said within 2 years, which I'm very happy about, but I don't actually know how that's going to happen. But anywho, so kind of came to all those realizations over the summer, and then he gives this speech on July 31st, and I was like, hey, if we control a publicly traded company, we can kill 3 birds with 1 stone here. And I was like, all right, let's go do this. Launching Forward Industries so that I can try and play an MNAV game and increment my Sol holdings is not worth the amount of brain damage that I have incurred to launch Forward Industries. But being able to accomplish regulatory objectives and accelerate crypto's adoption, and then to be able to use this as a publicly traded holdco to make interesting acquisitions that are accretive to shareholders and to the Solana ecosystem as a whole, that is an exciting opportunity.
It seems like a notable difference than how most of these ecosystems and sort of DATs are actually approaching the opportunity. Is this just a unique thing that you see in Solana, or are people just kind of missing the opportunity in other areas as well?
No, I don't think it's that we're have some insight the others don't. There's part of it's a scale problem. I think Forward is basically minimum viable scale to execute the strategy. And look, our next closest Solana competitor is a quarter of our size. So I think it's going to be very difficult for them just as a function of scale. You look at the Ethereum, you look at the other ecosystems, smaller than Solana, and I just don't think those ecosystems are large enough to facilitate this strategy in a way that probably public market shareholders would want. And then look, the last thing I'll say is it's the background of the sponsor group, Multicoin and Jump and Galaxy. We all bring very unique value to Forward, and we're obviously one of the leading investors in the Solana ecosystem. We have very pointed views about how market microstructure is going to evolve, how monetization is going to evolve for applications, all these things. And we know for a fact that public market investors are years behind us in our understanding of that. And so our ability to take those insights, do M&A, and then tell that story and execute on that, to us, I'm there's massive swings for us to take there. And that we are just perfectly positioned to do. And, just given who we are and our relationships in the ecosystem, I think we can get deals done that very, very few others will actually even be able to do.
Awesome. I know we have to let you go to some other engagements here, but really appreciate you hopping on live with us. Always interesting chatting with you, my friend.
Guys, thanks for having me on the show.
Cheers, brother.
Appreciate
Pleasure,
it.
man.
Happy Breakpoint.
You too.
Metaplex. This clip brought to you by Metaplex. Launch tokens and NFTs on Solana and the SVM.